Dragonflight's 10.1 update is bringing with it a swath of changes to Mythic Plus, including new affixes and a ton of reworks to old affixes. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the new affixes as well as the changes to the old ones, and going over lots of Mythic Plus changes as well. One of the biggest changes coming to Mythic Plus in 10.1 is the removal of 3 older affixes from the rotation. Explosive, Grievous, and Quaking are being removed to make room for Entangling, Incorporeal, and Afflicted, 3 new affixes. On top of that, 4 affixes, Spiteful, Raging, Bolstering, and Sanguine, are also seeing some significant changes to make them a little bit more easier to play with. Finally, we're also seeing a change to how affixes are put into keystones. The periodic affixes, which are affixes that happen throughout a key, being Afflicted, Incorporeal, Volcanic, Entangling, and Storming, are going to be added to keystones at level 7, while affixes that trigger on death or health ranges, such as Spiteful, Raging, Bursting, Bolstering, and Sanguine, are moved to level 14. On top of that, Thundering is gone. There is no more seasonal affix in Season 2 of Dragonflight. Instead, we're just getting the 8 dungeons, 4 new ones, 4 old ones, plus all these affix changes. So in this video, we're going over those affix changes. We're going to start with the new affixes coming up right now. So as I mentioned, there are 3 new affixes coming in 10.1 of Dragonflight, and the first one we're going to talk about is Entangling. In my honest opinion, Entangling is the easiest of the 3 to deal with. What happens is simply periodically during combat, a root will appear below you and snare you, and if you don't break the root within 8 seconds, you get stunned. So realistically, I don't think this one is that bad. The root itself is a 30% slow. It used to be a 50% slow. Any effect you have that clears, slows, or snares of any kind, such as Vengeful Retreat, Tiger's Fury or Lust, from Monks, Blessing of Freedom, Shapeshifting, Disengage, any of those effects will break it. But also, the root that spawns under you has a green circle indicator around it. If you move out of that range, it's 8 yards, then you will break the root and nothing will happen. Now, I'm going to mute myself for the next little section here so that you can hear what I'm going to try and say, but supposedly there is a sound that plays whenever the root shows up. Now, personally, I couldn't quite make it out. I think it's kind of a wooden creaking sound, but I'll mute myself during this next portion as the root shows up so that you can hear it too. Closer. So like I was saying, I'm pretty sure it's that wooden creaking sound. Again, couldn't really tell you either way, but this affix is very clear to tell when it shows up because of the big flowery root under you, the circle around you, and honestly, it's very unimpactful. 30% snare is not that bad. Lots of classes have ways of dealing with it. I think this affix is actually a really good addition to the roster of affixes in Season 2. The second of the new affixes is called Incorporeal. Now this, while in combat, periodically summons this big arcane guy for 20 seconds that chain casts an 8-second interruptible cast. If the cast finishes, you get a 50% damage and healing reduction put on you, which is pretty nasty. So the way to deal with this affix is to interrupt him in some way, preferably with hard CC. So this mob is actually every single mob type at once. If you can think of a mob type, he is that. Beast, Demon, Aberration, Dragonkin, Humanoid, everything. So all forms of hard CC work on this guy, and that is the preferred way. They are immune to damage, so if you use something like an Imprison on them, your damage thing effects won't break them out. They also can be stunned. Interrupting is probably the worst way to go, because after you interrupt it, it immediately goes again. And from what I can tell in my testing, things like Silence Sigil don't actually work on it. Unsure if Shadow Priest Silence or Prot Paladin Silence work. I'm pretty sure Prot Paladin Silence does. But in all things, I don't think this affix is too hard to deal with. It seemed like it was hard capped at 2 at a time, even with like bigger pulls. So you can see in this video here on your screen, I'm doing the big pull at the start of Freehold on my Prot Paladin, and I'm only really ever getting 2 at a time. They also changed this recently, where if you end combat with non-incorporeal enemies, then they'll just fade away, which means that, if you finish the pack, any incorporeals that are up currently will just fade out of existence. This is really good. They used to not be like this, which would lead to kind of a spiteful issue where you just kind of have to sit around for 20 seconds. So I'm glad they made this change. Altogether, I think Incorporeal is actually pretty good. It adds a little bit of interesting dynamics to a dungeon route. Maybe you'll lose a little bit of interrupts here and there, but I don't think overall it's too hard to deal with, especially with its seeming cap on how many you can get at a time in bigger pulls. Now, the final of the new affixes is called Afflicted, and personally, I think this is the worst of the three, basically just because it doesn't really have a cap on how many can spawn as you pull bigger. Now, this affix is literally a healer or off-heal affix. Basically, it spawns a bunch of adds that have 0 HP, 1 HP, and a poison, a disease, and a curse on them. And to counteract them, you have to heal them to full or dispel their poison, curse, or disease any way necessary. And if you do that before they finish their cast, then you avoid the 100% haste debuff, so you lose 100% haste from them. Now, I think this is the worst because it pulls, it can scale so badly into large pulls like Old Explosive did. You can see on the screen here, I'm on my prop paladin. I'm doing the big pull in Freehold, and a ton of these adds are spawning, way more than I myself could possibly do. So if you are pulling big and you have just one healer and no specs that have the off-heal capabilities, you're going to be in a rough time. I do think that prop paladin actually is really, really good at dealing with these. They have tons of off-healing. Ret paladin and holy paladin would be good as well too. But other than that, any other spec that has off-healing capabilities, evoker, druid, shaman, priest, stuff like that, will be a very good pick on these weeks to bring that kind of extra help for your healer to dealing with these. They nerfed them recently where the HP doesn't scale past the 20 and also isn't actually that crazy. So I do think that this affix can be good. I just do think there needs to be an upper limit on how many can spawn at once, because going into a pull and 6 of them spawn at the same time and you have 8 seconds to deal with them all, that's not very fun. Can lead to some very, very poor situations for your team and really limits pull size. I don't think is very good for an affix. But overall, it can be good if they put a limit like Incorporeal. But as it stands, because of this, you just have as many of them as you want. I don't think it's that great of an affix. Before we continue with the rest of the video, if you're appreciating the content, drop a like, go down, comment what your favorite affix is, what you're looking forward to, and especially hit the subscriber button. It really helps me out. I'll have tons of content throughout Season 2 and beyond. With that though, enjoy the rest of the video. So that is it for the new affixes. Now, another big part of this affix rework is the changes to 4 of the returning affixes, and the first one I want to touch on is bolstering. So for those of you that don't know, the old bolstering was that every time you defeated a mob in combat, it gave every other mob within a certain radius a 20% health and 20% damage increase. Now, for a lot of times, if you couldn't coordinate in a pack to kill things evenly and prio focus down one big health mob, this would pose a lot of trouble and really increase the time you're in combat with these packs. However, in 10.1, they are changing bolstering to remove the HP increase from it. It's still going to be 20% damage increase for each mob, which will absolutely beat on your tank. However, they won't also gain the 20% HP increase. You won't have one lieutenant mob that just has 128% increased HP and damage. Overall, I think this is a good change. You still want to play around bolstering and kill a pack evenly, but it doesn't almost double the HP of a mob if you mess it up and kind of lose out on that prio damage which you need in a pack. So I do think this is a good change. I do think removing the HP bonus reduces a lot of the frustrations with the affix. So overall, I think this is great, and I'm excited to play with the new bolstering. Spiteful is another affix seeing a change. Now, Spiteful is an affix new in Shadowlands, the previous expansion, which on death, enemies spawn these spiteful shades, which target one of you and then hunt you down and melee you. Now, these melees on high keys would essentially just one-shot you and deal a ton of damage. So to counteract this, Spiteful Shade's melee damage has been reduced by 10%, and Spiteful Shade's health and damage no longer scale after Keystone level 20. I think this is a very important change because Spiteful, to quote Dratnos, is really one of those affixes where it's you do it or you don't do it, right? It's very binary, and binary affixes are not something that's good. A binary affix is something where there's no interplay within it. There's not really a lot of counterplay. It's just either you're dying to a Spiteful or you're nowhere near a Spiteful, and that's not good. You do not want that. So with this change now above a 20, realistically you're going to get Spitefuls that aren't actually doing enough damage to probably one-shot you. Will they hurt you a lot? Yes, but you can probably live 1, maybe even 2 on certain classes melees from them, And I do think that's a big change and very good, especially for melee, to allow them to have more melee uptime and deal more damage in packs, especially to spitefuls, right? Like if one mob dies early and you have a spiteful, well, maybe you have a little bit extra time there with that spiteful. So I do think this is a good change. Alleviates a lot of the frustrations of the affix, and overall is a good net positive to Mythic Plus health. The third of the changes is going to be Raging. Now beforehand, whenever enemies reach 30% health, Raging would cause them to deal 50% increased damage done until defeated or until the Enrage is dispelled. This is being changed pretty heavily. So now it has a duration of 20 seconds, but can still be dispelled via Enrage dispels. Soothes, I guess you could say. But it now grants creatures immunity to crowd control effects. Now this does not count kicks, so everything can be interrupted. This was hotfixed. When this affix was initially updated, they could not be interrupted, which posed a lot of issues. But now that this can be interrupted, the last 30% health of enemies, they cannot be stunned, knocked up, knocked back, slowed, rooted, all that stuff. I do think this is a good change. There are certain enemies, such as mobs in Freehold, who run away at lower health, where you can't really stop them now. But keeping a soothe for those mobs and not using it on some of the harder hitting ones that just sit in there and are immune to CC anyways, I think is a good change. Lots of enemies were already immune to CC, which would start smacking your tank when enraged. So this does make enraged dispel classes very valuable on these weeks, but does not make them almost necessary as it was before. So again, I think this is a great change, making it so that their interruptible is great. Immunity to crowd control can certainly mess up some pulls and some routing, but keeping those kicks valuable while also making it so you don't just kind of hard brick your key by not having an enrage dispel on enraging weeks, I think is very good. Again, very happy with this change. So the final of the changed returning affixes is going to be Sanguine. Now, Sanguine is an affix that on death drops a puddle which damages you and heals enemies. This is very frustrating at lower ranks because the puddles, tanks don't kite very well at the lower end of gameplay. However, this change should help a bit with that, as it is a nerf of puddle duration. So it is going from 20 seconds, the current, to 12 seconds. And up on the screen here, you'll see two clips. One where they last for 12 and one where it lasts for 20. So it's going to be an actual pretty big difference in the uptime of the Sanguine puddles. While this won't matter a lot, because generally, again, you want to kill mobs at the same time for Sanguine. In scenarios where you don't, or in scenarios where the Sanguine puddles are blocking your path through like a small hallway, this is going to be very good for you. You're going to notice that in an environment where you end up killing a lower health mob before higher health mobs and they all Sanguine, then you're not going to have as rough as a time. An example of this, birds before Croth, for example, all those small birds are just so much lower health than the big ones. It's very often you see them die before the big ones do, or even the worms in Alcathar Academy too. So there are lots of examples where this is going to be very useful for you. Or, if Sanguine drops in a puddle, in a hallway, and you're kiting back the way you came, away from mobs, the puddles can often block you. With this, they won't last for as long and will not block you for as long. So hopefully you'll see some nice positive changes there. As an affix, Sanguine used to last so much longer. I think it was up over 30 seconds at one point. So seeing it down to 12 is very funny. Honestly, it seems to me like Blizzard is working towards just having Sanguine barely last ever at all and be almost a non-affix. So we'll see how this one ends up. I don't think this one's going to have too big of an impact on your general key gameplay, but in those scenarios where Sanguine lasting for a little while was frustrating, you'll definitely notice a big difference and it'll definitely be a little better. So that is a little bit of a deep dive on the 3 new affixes as well as the 4 changed affixes for Dragonflight Season 2. If we see another big round of changes, which honestly, besides Afflicted being limited to how many they have, I don't expect to see too big of a change from here. I will do another update video like this, but if you enjoyed the content, drop a like, a sub, and a comment as well. It would really help me out. I personally love these changes. I am so looking forward to Dragonflight Dungeons in Season 2. I think it's going to be a really good time. I'm going to be streaming a lot of Mythic Plus on this channel, as well as Raid. So if you enjoy that stuff, stick around for it. Keep a lookout for that. But that is it for the video today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for the next video. So have a good rest of your day. Peace. A big shout out to my YouTube channel members, Dimmy and Flapjack67. Your guys' support has really helped me make these videos as good as I can. If you're looking to support me and help me make more videos and better videos, then click the link in the description below to learn more about channel membership and get a ton of sweet perks while you help me make this channel as great as it can. Thank you.